Hello, my name's Ely Percy and I'm going to read from my debut novel, Vicky Romeo Plus Joolz. Vicky Romeo Plus Joolz is a queer coming-of-age story about a young, working-class butch lesbian who thinks she's got life figured out and then she falls in love and realises that she hasn't. It's set in Glasgow in 2001 and it deals with issues such as coming out, biphobia and the search for identity. So I'm going to read from the opening to start. I only ever cried over 3 people in my life. First time I was 6 years old, and Ma had just told me that Dad had gone to live someplace else and that he wasn't ever coming back. Now I loved my daddy. I thought he was the best dad in the world. He used to sing to me. He used to sing all the old jazz and blues classics by stars like Sinatra and Nat King Cole. He took all his records with him the day he moved out. And the note I left about the money for my school trip, he didn't even sign it. Second time I cried was when my first girlfriend left me. Oh, I was sweet 16 and never been kissed until I met her. I was in love for the very first time. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with her, then she broke my heart. It was a long time later, felt like a lifetime, before I met another girl. I fell in love all over again. From the very first moment I ever set eyes on her, I knew she was special. Her name was Jules, and she was the third. I cried again today. I've been dusting, keeping myself busy, trying to forget, when I found an old lipstick under my bed. French kiss, from the Miss Selfridge range, she said. I recognised the shiny silver heart imprinted on the bottom like a kiss mark. I ran my fingers over the smooth lean body of the silver container. There was a small hairline fracture. I remembered now. That first day we'd met. She'd been walking towards the bar, rummaging around in her handbag when she dropped it. I'd picked it up, gently fingered it, then gave it back. First thing I noticed about her was her nails. Small, slender, sculpted like her body, and painted baby pink to match her pouting lips. Jules was the most beautiful girlfriend a girl could ever have. As I lightly traced a crack with the tip of my finger, it widened into a small heart-shaped gap, about 1 millimetre in girth. Slowly, I removed the top. All that was left was a trace of molten pink. So I'm going to skip forward to about halfway through chapter 3, and this is a flashback about Vicky growing up. I think the only thing you have to know in this chapter is that her mum comes out as a lesbian later in life. At 16, I ditched school as soon as I could. When my standard grade exams were over, I took up busking during the day and dishwashing at the Hilton Hotel in the evenings. Mama accused me of being a waster. You're turning out just like him, she lamented. She meant my father. She was always dragging my lame-ass Dumbo of a father into everything she thought I did wrong. I rolled my eyes, having heard it all a zillion times before. He never worked, he never wanted, he was a lazy son of a bitch. It was the same mantra. I was going the same way, apparently. Don't make faces at me, lady, she would say, waving a wet rag. You're bone idle. You should be helping me do some of these dishes. Yeah, right, like I don't do enough dishes at work. Work? You don't know what work is. You sit on your backside all day, playing that stupid guitar. Do you think somebody's going to come along out of nowhere and say, hey Vicky, here's a record contract? It doesn't work like that. I shrugged. It was the same lecture day in, day out. She never let up. I can sing. I got what it takes. Oh, you can sing? She nodded. Well, that's okay then. But then she'd start on about my father again. He thought he had what it took. Look what happened to him. You want to end up like him? Blah, blah, blah. My father had been a singer. He was on the road a lot when I was small. And I used to love seeing him when he came home after a long trip. He'd make me shandy and lemonade, and he was always full of stories about other famous bands he'd supposedly met. All bullshit, probably, but my 6-year-old ears believed every word he said. When he finally left home for good, after flaunting a string of floozies, he didn't even bother coming back to visit me, let alone pay Mama child support. I used to cry myself to sleep every night, wondering what I did to make my daddy stop loving me. I even blamed Ma for making him go away. This made her cry and left me feeling like a rat. Eventually, I realised that I didn't need him, and that Ma was much happier when he wasn't around. She got a job working in a bar, and the lady across the road helped look after me for a couple of hours a week. She even started out going dancing once a month, which was something she used to love to do. After Dad left, we got to do all these things and go to all these places that we never had any money for before. Now, normally when Ma said things about my father, I just let them wash over me. But on this day, something inside me snapped. "Don't ever compare me to that useless fuck," I spat. "You never want to hear me play. You're never interested in anything I do." Ma's lips opened into a wide O, then she clamped them shut again. It was true though. She kept referring to my music as a hobby, and she'd say stuff like, "Oh, you'll never make any money from singing," and it just always felt like she was pissing all over my dream. "Don't talk to your mother like that," said Sam. My eyes and face were burning, and I wanted to smack something for effect. I balled my fist so tightly that my nails left little red marks inside my palms. "You can't tell me what to do," I screamed. "You're not my father." This last remark I regretted almost as soon as I'd said it. I knew it was shitty to bring Sam into this. She was only trying to help, and after all, our relationship had always been a good one. She'd never tried to emulate my father. She'd never tried to be anything other than a friend to me. "Go to your room now," ordered Ma. Her face was scarlet, and her words were slow and controlled. "You can't say 'go to your room,'" I mimicked. "You can't just treat me like some little kid." I must have sounded like one though, my voice all high-pitched and whiny. I always had big ambitions. I decided I'd become a singer or an actor or stand-up comedian. Maybe I'd do all three. I wanted to do something big like write or direct films. I didn't want to end up pushing paper around a desk in some drab, decrepit office where my creativity would be crapped on. I told them as much. "I think," hushed Sam, resting her arm softly on my shoulder, "that you should do what your mother says." "Well, I never asked for your opinion." I shrugged her arm off and marched out of the room, slamming the door behind me. Minutes later, with my ear pressed hard against the bedroom wall, I listened intently to Sam pleading my case. "It'll be fine," she kept repeating over and over. "She'll take a year out, earn some money and go to college just like I did." I could hear Ma's deep sigh, and maybe even a sob, I wasn't sure. "It'll do her good, help her stand on her own 2 feet. Yeah, that's right, that's it. "I don't know, Sam. What if she doesn't go to college next year?" "She will." "She spends all her time playing music and chasing stupid fantasies." "Who says it's a fantasy? She's right, Maria. You never listen to what Vicky wants. She has talent." "You think I don't recognise talent?" cried Ma angrily. "I've seen hundreds of people with talent. Vicky's father was a prime example." "But Vicky's different," Sam protested. "She's really fucking good." "No. George thought he was different too. He wasted years of my life on his stupid pipe dream. I'm not having my daughter going down the same road." For some time afterwards, there was an uneasy silence. I lay in my bed, staring up at the ceiling. My acoustic guitar rested on my belly. Slowly, I began plucking every individual string. Okay, I'm going to go to chapter 19, and this is a short story that the narrator Vicky has written for her evening class in creative writing, and it's called A Day in the Life of the Lesbian Pen. The lesbian pen's name was Radcliffe Orlando Sackville West, and she was a member of the Ballpoint family. Born in a tiny assembly line in a factory in Elephant and Castle sometime around late July of 1987, Radcliffe was the offspring of a charity called the London Lesbian Line. She spent most of her earlier years together with a cluster group of her unemployed sister pens, inside a brown and white spotted Tupperware mug, behind a potted cactus on the windowsill of the 4th floor of the Women's Archive Trust for Scotland. This, of course, was until she was obscurely plucked by one Christine Elizabeth Platt, a wart-fingered student of English literature and queer theory, who recognised Radcliffe's obvious talent for essay writing despite a lack of previous experience in either orthography or manuscription. And although Radcliffe did not possess the fluidity of an ink gel or fountain pen, nor could she claim kinship to the Watermans or prestigious Parkers, the partnership she had with Christine Platt was found to be a most amicable one, for she loved nothing more than putting words on paper, especially long meandering sentences that praised the literary merits of her favourites Woolf and Shelley and Carter, and she spent many snug nights thereafter tugged between the thumb and forefinger of the 30-year-old scholar. At least that was until the dreaded day when Christine lent Radcliffe to a dyslexic client who had come to the archive to participate in an adult literacy programme. It was a most uncomfortable experience, and Radcliffe had never even so much as learned the person's name, for the handwriting on the official form was completely illegible, and having no eyes or ears or other sensory abilities, she had no way of gleaning pieces of information that weren't written down. And so this is the sad, sad story of how Radcliffe Orlando Sackville West fell from grace after falling from the anonymous person's coat pocket, having never been returned to Christine Platt, and how she was subsequently kicked along a pavement and through 2 sets of revolving doors before being picked up once again. And it was in the sweaty palm of a square-handed nose-picker named Frank Unwin that she next found herself. Ham-fisted, he thrice dragged the unimpressed Radcliffe across a torn-off piece of beer-ringed drinks flyer that was advertising a Cocks in Frocks night at Bennett's nightclub. Radcliffe was appalled by the penmanship of Frank, which was sloppy, slumping and backward sloping, unlike the upright, neatly printed font of her former mistress. Oh, how she longed to be back in Christine's loving grip. She might have cried then if only she'd had the ability. But so refined was Radcliffe Orlando Sackville West that she didn't leave so much as an ink blot. Frank wiggled her round plastic bottom against the septum of his nose, and then in each of his ear holes alternately, before discarding her on the wet wooden table. Oh, woe is me, thought Radcliffe, I am rooted, yet I flow. And she began worrying at once that she might never again have the opportunity to quote from another precious poem or novel. Each has his past, shut in him like the leaves of a book, known to him by heart, she told herself silently, and his friends can only read the title. And then, after a moment's hesitation, she began to question her very existence. Why was she here? Why was she even on this earth, if not to write great sweeping sentences that mimicked the very essence of Bronte's feelings as she walked across the moors? She had been thrown aside like a Latin proverb, and she was thoroughly suspicious that it was because of her gender and overt sexuality. Why, if I were a man, she began, but did not finish her sentence, as she began distracted when she was once again lifted up into another set of hands. These hands were small, cool and calloused, and yet gentle, and Radcliffe correctly guessed that they belonged to a female. This was a relief, for her recent, and indeed only, experience of being fingered by a man was so horrible a one that she hoped never to repeat it. She also noticed, in settling into the woman's tender grasp, that she was left-handed, and had a tiny paper cut on the edge of her thumb, and as Radcliffe was guided to press the words Tracy and the importance of being earnest onto another, drier drinks flyer, she hoped to wonder that this person was a scholar like Christine. Perhaps they know each other, she mused. Perhaps they are on the same university course. And perhaps, she thought, with a wave of excitement, we shall be reunited. But Radcliffe's burst of hope was short-lived, and she was once again dispensed against her wishes to another personage, who, she noted, was almost certainly female, and another left-hander. The woman's name was Julie, and she didn't care one jot about the well-being of the poor lesbian pen. After she'd finished scribbling, she unzipped her handbag and carelessly tossed Radcliffe into its black abyss. And Radcliffe, now too excited to continue feeling outraged, began to think of her literary heroines, and how many of them had been persecuted before finding greatness. And with this thought, she comforted herself as she disappeared amongst the loose change and the paper hankies and the other miscellaneous pieces of clutter that she could not readily recognise. Thanks for listening. My name's Ely Percy, and I hope you enjoyed that.